Hello, everybody. How's everybody doing? I hope well. I hope you had a good Thanksgiving. Hope you ate a lot of turkey, even though I know most of you probably didn't have any turkey. So I'll keep it a secret if I had turkey or not. Right? 'Cause I'm not the biggest turkey fan, but I can do it. I can eat it. So just to remind you, we're getting close to the end of the quarter. And the good thing about this quarter, the ending of the fall quarter, is that Christmas will be soon and New Year's. So hopefully you guys will start your Christmas shopping and enjoy many things. Today, I'm going to combine two chapters because even though I was being kind last week before your Thanksgiving, it was a little short. So I don't want it quite as short, the video lecture, as last week. So, but again, we're going to be out of here soon. And remember, the last week will just be a test. You won't have to hear me or talk to me, right? Yay. Okay, so let me get on to the material. So it'll be a combination of two different chapters and a mix of two different question sets, okay? Okay, so let me minimize myself if I can. Ooh, take me down to the bottom. Does it want to do it? Yay, I'm gone. Okay, so let me go to the slideshow and then from the beginning. So this is English 103, public speaking, week 8, which I didn't say. This is scheduled for November 30th, the last day in November of 2020. Okay. All right. So I have a nice smooth time through this. Delivery. Now, we're not talking about Grubhub here, delivery of food. We're talking about delivery is called how you say something or like how you act. So you got to have a little charisma when you're giving a speech. And so the way that you do it, your performance, is called your delivery. Okay, so just to make sure we understand that. Starting here at the top, your reputation or your topic might entice bodies into the seats. So entice means to make somebody excited and want to do something. So if you have a great reputation as a public speaker, this might excite people and they want to come see you that haven't seen you before, but because of your reputation. We use this word entice a lot, like the food looks enticing, which means actually looks more than delicious, looks like you really, really want to try it. Okay. Continuing, but it will take an effective speech to keep their minds in the room. So what they're saying there is that, and you might have experienced this with many things. You might go see somebody, and I'm talking besides speech, because they have a great reputation. But you see this part where it says to keep their minds in the room. The person has to deliver a good speech. If they just talk nonsense or a boring style, people will get bored with you, right? So that's the same here. It's kind of like, I don't know if you ever watch Gagman or stand-up comics, you know? When you see them like on a TV show, talk show, or what have you, they've been practicing their act at these small comic clubs in these small cities all over the United States. So when they get to you, that's perfect and it's funny. But if you were to go see them when they started 10 cities before and they try out and practice their information, it might not have been that funny, right? So you cannot have only reputation alone. Performance, delivery. Okay, so even if you've written the best speech ever, all can be lost at the delivery stage. Again, here's another issue. I talked to you, which we've had before you read this, write the speech and then writing the speech. You can have the best written speech, but if your performance is, yeah, it's not going to come across well, even though the words are fantastic, right? So remember these important points right just here in the beginning. So starting with get there early. You should arrive at the venue. The venue is where you're going to speak at least half an hour before the time you're scheduled to speak. If there are speakers scheduled before you, do your best to arrive a half hour before they start to speak. It's always to your advantage to hear what the speakers preceding, which means going before you, have to say. There's a certain strategy there that they're not telling you about, but let's say you get to watch a few speakers and they say a couple of things that is funny with the audience. You can pick up on that and use it in yours. You had no planning about that whatsoever. Okay? Or, as it says here, look for potential logistical problems. Now, these are logistical, meaning where you're going to give a speech, and they will go into what these are and have them fixed before you begin, such as the height and size of the lectern. Again, the lectern is that long horizontal piece of wood that you stand behind. So maybe somebody was a small lady who came before you and you're a tall man. So it's set at her size. If you're early, you can fix it to your size. Otherwise, it'll be down by your belly button, right? It should be wide enough to accommodate 2 sheets of paper side by side, high enough that you can clearly see your notes, and low enough for you to comfortably see over and be seen by the audience. So again, you need it. It can't be a narrow, the top of it where you place your papers. You need one for what you're reading net, and then when you take it, you finish, you put it on the right. So it has to be wide enough on the top. And then high enough, again, if it was really low for the person before you, it's going to be hard to see your notes. You got to bring it up closer to your neck area. But then it has to be low enough. So let's say you're the tall man who went first, and then the small lady comes next. If it's over her head, she can't see her notes, and she definitely cannot see the audience. So these are important things. 2, whether microphones are working. Sometimes they're not, so you have to test them before you start the speech. Don't wait until you have to get up there and perform. There are few things as amateurish as speaking, tapping a microphone upon arriving at the lectern and asking if it's working. So you don't want to do that when they introduce you and you have to start your speech. You want that done prior. 3, the availability of drinking water to minimize spills. Never have your glass more than half full. Okay, so this is a 2-parter. You want to have drinking water, especially if you're going to do a long style speech. You'll get thirsty, okay? But to minimize spills, don't have a full glass. I mean, you might regularly like a full glass, but that's going to make it very easy to knock it over, spill on your notes, then you can't read them, or go and hit the floor and break and shatter, and maybe a piece of glass hit somebody. You don't want that, okay? Another thing, whether there are background noises that need to be eliminated. So if there's an open office space near where you're giving this company speech and people are on the phone or yelling or talking loud, you're gonna have to ask someone, hey, can I have this door closed or this room closed before I start my speech? Because it's a very noisy and I don't want it to interfere with my speech. Okay. 5, whether there are any lights that will distract you. So if there's any strange lights in the hallway or something creeping in, again, you're early, you ask someone, can you please turn off that light? It's coming through the glass and making my speech area look kind of strange. Okay. All right, let's continue. Ask your host whether the makeup of your audience is pretty much the same as expected when you first discussed the event. Now here we're not talking about makeup, what ladies put on their face, or if you're Korean pop singing group and you put makeup on as handsome young guys. No, the makeup is what is the audience makeup, right? Are they mostly older people? Are they mostly young? Is it a mix? And when you arrange the event and reserve the event, you usually ask, what kind of audience am I going to speak to? And then you'll know if they tell you, they're all senior citizens from Silvertown. Okay, then you can kind of judge your speech for that type of audience for more effectiveness. If the audience is slightly different than earlier anticipated, there shouldn't be any problems. Slightly, you see the words, so that means a little bit. But if it's dramatically or very much different, for example, much older or younger, you may have to do some last minute editing on your content, of your speech. And that's why you get there early so you can do it. If you're one of those people that just likes to arrive, like, what time's my speech? 10 o'clock? Okay. I'm going to go up there at 9:59. I'm 1 minute early. Bingo bongo, you started. You said, uh-oh, my speech was written for senior citizens. Everybody in here is like early 20s. You're not going to have time to edit. You should determine how many people are expected and ask the organizers to get rid of unneeded chairs in the back row. Again, you're going to want everybody up as close to you as possible. People tend to sit at the back of the room, and empty chairs up front make a bad impression, and it looks bad if everybody's sitting in the back and you've got 3-4 rows of empty chairs right in front of you. Like, who are you talking to? You're going to have to yell. Don't stand off in a corner with a host or by yourself. Circulate, which means walk around, and introduce yourself to some members of the audience. You can do this prior to establish a relationship, and it'll help you relax and the audience member. Try to find out some things about them. Ask them, hey, how you doing? How long you work for the company? What division or what part of the company do you work in? It's all your early free time. Use to your advantage. Learn the names of a few to use. If appropriate, yeah, you can use it in the speech. Oh, I spoke to John over there. The guy from accounting was a great guy. These things help. I know most people don't think about them. So again, if appropriate and in context, you might ask, is it okay if I mention you in my speech? If they say, yeah, go right ahead. And this is when you're delivering your speech. If you're going to mention a name or two, be sure to get the pronunciation right. That's another thing. If the guy has a little difficult name, make sure you get it correctly, okay? And Americans are they have a bad reputation for not trying to pronounce things correctly. So one of the biggest ones is, hey, karaoke, right? When the actual Japanese pronunciation is karaoke, right? So you don't want to do that to someone's name. Jot down the names on your script, which means write down. You can just write the names above your script that you pre-wrote, or on a separate card. But remember, we shoot for a script, not for cards. Cards can be tricky. And unless it's a one-syllable name, spell it out phonetically. So that means like if her name is Monica, it's not Joe or Sam, then you go Monica. So it gives you a better shot at pronouncing it correctly. Okay. When the event begins. Once the event begins, listen carefully to everything that's said before you speak. So listen to it. Like I said, you'll get information from these speakers that go prior to you. What goes on before you arrive at the lectern can often provide sources of humor. I said, funny stuff. Spontaneity, that means the ability to adjust immediately, be spontaneous. And immediacy. Immediacy is having a relationship with the audience. So the more people you shake their hand and talk to them and maybe get their name, that's more people that when you get up there, they already know your name and they're comfortable with you. These are all techniques. The audience will also be impressed that you've been paying attention to what's going on around you. Yes. Instead of looking around with an empty stare, like, huh? They're like, wow, this guy kind of cares for the company and maybe the people in the company. This will help you. They will interpret or understand this as strong indication that you're a confident, well-prepared person who's probably worth listening to. And if they think you're worth listening to, they will. Just as it's the opposite. If they don't think you're worth listening to, they won't. Listening carefully can also keep you out of trouble. For example, if the event is being sponsored by General Motors, you want to make sure you don't mention Ford. Yeah, don't mention the competition. Don't go speak at McDonald's and talk about how much you love Burger King. Don't do it. Also, you might pick up a tidbit, which is a small size of information that you can use in your opening. For example, you might learn that the sponsoring organization's president just received a significant or important award, and you can add your congratulations. So they don't know that you know, but you find out and you go up there and say, hey, I just want to congratulate the president of McDonald's here on his award for $1 billion or 1 billion hamburgers being sold, and I want to congratulate him. That's impressive. They might, the president might just want to talk to you after, say, hey, thank you. Everybody loves to be recognized. Be watchful for incompetent organizers, chairpersons, and introducers. So incompetent means someone who's not really at the good level of doing their jobs. And you have to be watchful because they can make mistakes that you're not making, but they are, and they will embarrass you. Even if you follow the advice in chapter 3 about providing information to them, they'll often get your qualifications wrong or may invent information to make you sound more important than you are. Exaggeration can be worse than understatement. So exaggeration is, let's say you're a pretty girl from Korea and you won the Miss Gangnam beauty pageant, right? But you don't make sure that the organizer or the presenter, you just kind of mention them. Yeah, I was Miss Gangnam. And the person's incompetent, not paying attention, and they introduce you as Miss Korea. You know, that might cause you problems and embarrassment. And an understatement is when people don't want you to know that they maybe have a high qualification or award, and they'll just tell you something lower, right? So the exaggeration, the bragging can be seen as worse. Okay. while listening carefully to the proceedings before you speak. Scan, which means quickly look over the audience from time to time in order to gain a degree of familiarity with them. Engage, which means to adjust your reaction to what's going on. So what they mean here, what they're not telling you here is that, when you give a speech, and you do it, a few times, when you look in the audience, there's going to be some people who kind of look away, and then some people who just stare at you and don't smile and are not that friendly. And then there's some people that just smile at you. So they're kind of saying, when you feel nervous, kind of look at the people who smile at you because you have a familiarity and you say something like in your mind, okay, to the left, there's a lot of mean people, but to the right, there's a lot of friendly people. So, spend a good amount of your time there, but, keep on scanning. So next is your opening. It's the beginning of your speech. If the audience hasn't had a break in the hour before you begin to speak, you should relinquish, which means give up a moment or two of your time to give them a chance to stretch their legs. So you say, hey, I realize here that since the prior speech began and the end, it's been an hour and you haven't had a break. Why don't we all, get up and stretch our legs and, maybe get a little water. And this will not only make you very popular for the audience, but will also allow you more time to be comfortable with your surroundings. And again, the more you look around, get some of the nervousness out of your system, the better you'll be. If you're not going to have a leg stretch, spend a few seconds to take a good look around the audience before you start. Audiences don't mind watching you give them the once over, the look over. It's a sign that you're thinking on your feet, that you're in control. Thank your introducer, but don't restate any of your qualifications at this point. It would just sound pompous. Pompous is a slang word for egotistical. So if the person, the introducer, introduces you correctly, don't go over them again. Otherwise, it sounds egotistical. So if they get it right, and like I said, you're the lady I used as an example earlier, and he says it correctly. He says, she was 2019's Miss Gangnam. There's no reason for you to say it again. Oh, yes, I was Miss Gangnam 2019. Just, he said it, let it go. Don't sound egotistical. However, if the introducer made errors, that's what you have to watch then. In the introduction, that absolutely need to be corrected, such as announcing the wrong topic. That's another thing. You're going to have a topic on hamburgers, and the introducer says she's going to give a great speech on hot dogs. You have to let him know. You can do it in a funny way. Say, I did hot dogs last week, but this week, I'm doing hamburgers. Identifying you with the wrong company. Yes, you're with Samsung, and he says she's with LG. You have to fix that in a nice way. That's why you try to talk with these persons before and check with them and make sure they don't put you in these embarrassing situations. Or grossly overstating your qualifications. Again, you're ex-Miss Gangnam. You don't want him to say you're ex-Miss Korea, and then you were possibly Miss Universe. Stop him before it gets worse. Now is the time to good-naturedly set the record straight. And that's what I mean. In a funny way, a nice way, a kind way, tell the person, hey, shut up. Or, hey, you're lying. You don't know what you're talking about. Are you a dummy? You don't do that. And setting the record straight just means, it's a slang term for getting the information correct. Don't start off with apologies unless you were late arriving. Yes, don't start your speech with an apology. I'm sorry, but I don't know my topic very well. Or I'm sorry. Don't do that. It puts people in a negative spot right away. You don't want that. Only thing you apologize for is you being late. on the freeway. You were driving in the 405 and a giant truck of cookie dough turned over and the driver ran away and it was the gingerbread man. Okay, then you can do that. Everything else can be ignored. For example, if you have a slight cold, don't call attention to it by apologizing. Unless, of course, you sneeze. You can apologize for a sneeze, but don't get up there and say, oh, I have this bad cold. I don't know what I'm going to do. Right? It says here, a cold that's bad enough to warrant an apology. But it's probably bad enough to warrant a cancellation, especially right now in the time of COVID. You get up there and you have cold symptoms, people are going to say, does she have COVID? Oh my God, I got to leave. So if your cold is pretty bad, just cancel. Come back when you're healthy. Again, remember, we're in the time of COVID right now. As mentioned in chapter 3, being at the venue, again, this is the place where you're going to give the speech, early enough to hear any preceding speakers may pay off as you open your talk. If one of them said something relevant to your talk, which means pertaining to, mention it here. So if somebody said something that is relatable to your speech, you mention it here. The audience will see that you cared enough to be there early, were paying attention to the earlier speakers, and are confident enough in your own ability as a speaker not to be afraid to refer to what someone else had to say. Right? Shows that confidence. Here we go, a little more definite here. The 4 forces at work during your delivery. 1, your words. 2, your voice. 3, your face, particularly your eyes. A lot of people make a speech and they'll have their eyes closed. That's not a good technique. You're just nervous and don't want to look at the audience members in the face. And 4, your body. You can't be jiggling and jumping around or doing some kind of, K-pop dance. You have to control your body. So, sounds like a possible good question for the final in a few weeks. Like, what are the 4 forces? But please watch the video. Please pay attention to the lecture. Otherwise, like I've had some students in the past that they didn't study, and then they got this question, which I don't know if it's going to be in the final. I might be teasing you. What are the 4 forces in public speaking? And then they say, wind, rain, heat, earthquake. That's not what I'm looking for. Okay. All right. They must all work together to convey or give a consistent message. And that, again, is very, very important. It has to be consistent. I've talked about this in the past, where a student has a speech about hamburgers, like I said, and they start about hamburgers, and then they're like, oh, did I tell you that I also love hot dogs? And then, oh, and by the way, pizza's pretty cool too. So it's not consistent. They've gotten away from talking about hamburgers. And again, you can mix it up, but they have to be about hamburgers. So you can talk about the regular hamburger, then move on to the cheeseburger, then on to the chili burger, right? But they're all hamburgers. Consistency is important. Try looking in the mirror and saying, I love you, with a hateful, angry look on your face, and you'll get the idea of what I mean. So that's the face. You can say it, but if you look angry or bored, you are not believable. Or look in the mirror and say something with a 2-second pause between each word. I am really excited. Sounds terrible compared to I'm really excited. One conveys the message one sounds like you're bored. Tone, which is the sound of your voice. Facial expressions and body language are as important as your actual words. So that goes back to the beginning where we read that it doesn't matter even if your speech was written by the best speechwriter. It's how you deliver it. Indeed, sometimes audiences will react more to your nonverbal signals than to your words. So again, if you're up there doing a K-pop dance, they're going to start watching your body and how well you dance. They're not going to be listening to the words of your speech. If your facial expression and body language don't reflect or show your words, the audience may be thinking, he's saying it, it's a pleasure to be talking to us, but he doesn't really feel that way, right? So again, it's just like if you tell someone, it can go both ways. A woman really doesn't think the guy's handsome, but she's going to be kind and say, yeah, you're handsome, whatever. Well, if she says it like that, it's not to be believed, right? So finishing that thought off, they'll think that you're either not comfortable with your material, your speech, or that you're a hypocrite. They may even think both. And a hypocrite is somebody that says something and really doesn't mean it. So like what I said before, the woman doesn't think you're handsome, but she tells you, yeah, you're a handsome guy. Wow. You can tell by the way she says it. She really doesn't mean it. So she's a hypocrite. At the bottom, when your words, facial expressions, tone of voice, and body language are not consistent, the audience receives a confusing and ineffective series of signals. Your believability suffers the most. That's what I said. They won't believe you. We dealt with your words during the preparation stage. So here we'll discuss the other three forces: voice, face, and body. First, for voice. The secret to looking and sounding natural, you want to sound natural and confident, is to be conversational. That's the key. Because when people have a conversation, they do it naturally. There's no worry or thinking about it. This means speaking with the same pace, which means speed, timing, pauses, inflection. Inflections are like accents to your words, right? Like you can have the regular, I use Korean, chogi, and then someone says jockey. That's an inflection, the second one. Okay? Second accent word. Same in Spanish. Pasión, right? The accents at the end. An emphasis that you would use in an animated conversation, which means a lively conversation with a bunch of friends around the dinner table. A good speech is just good, effective conversation, standing up rather than sitting down. I think you should try your best to remember that. A good speech is just an effective conversation, standing up rather than sitting down. Hopefully, if you stick that in your mind, it'll make you relax more when you have to get up in front of a class and give a speech. Never slip into monotone. Monotone is that one straight sound like a robot. There is no inflection, right? It's just, I walk to the store every day. You don't want to sound like that. You're not a robot. Always be sure to emphasize what needs to be emphasized. Some people don't really emphasize the important part of their speech and it gets lost. People just say, well, yeah, I listened to the words. It wasn't too bad, but I don't know what the emphasis of the speech is on. So you've got to remember that. To understand the importance of this point, repeat the following sentence 6 times, emphasizing a different word each time. Okay? I never said he stole the money. So the same 6 words will have 6 different meanings. So what they're saying is like you do it one time. I never said he stole the money, or I never said he stole the money, or I never said he stole the money. So each word that you emphasize gives a different meaning. Okay. If you have a microphone, you don't need to speak more loudly than normal. Some people think they have to start yelling when they get a microphone. I don't know why, but that's what's going to allow you to speak normal or even a little more softly, because the microphone will accentuate it. If you have to speak more loudly than normal in order to be audible, which means heard, to everyone in the room, then you should have a microphone. Yeah, you'll definitely need one if that's how you feel. Next, we've gone over your voice. Now let's do your face. If you want the people in the audience to enjoy themselves, you have to look like you're enjoying yourself, right? You can't get up there and says, everybody happy? But you're, is everybody happy? You don't look happy. You can't do that with scowls and frowns. Okay. We'll do the easy one first. Frown, the easy way to remember this is how I was taught when I was a kid. A frown is a smile that's upside down. So obviously people know you're sad with a frown. Parents used to tell their kids, don't frown, be happy. Next is scowl. So scowl is almost like a frown, but that's people scowl when they're angry. You can tell, like, hey. So it's a little higher. The frown goes lower, but it's kind of like spread farther. A scowl. Scowls and frowns never go over well, which means never make the audience happy with audiences. Smile, but not like a grinning idiot, right? Not like a gag man, like you don't want to do that. Natural smiles at the right places are the smiles that work. Never stifle. Stifle means to stop something very hard. So never try to stop hard a smile or a chuckle. And a chuckle is like a small little laugh, like that's a chuckle. Unless it's a smile or a chuckle at someone else's expense, which that line means you can stop it if you're going to be laughing or chuckling at someone else to make fun of them. Don't do it. But if it's just in the generosity of your speech, let it go. You know, or if it's about you, people like people who can laugh at themselves. Okay. At the bottom, as with your tone of voice, try to use the same facial expressions you would if you were in a conversation with a few good friends. It's good not to be exaggerated. Just be natural. Have a good time or the audience won't. So you have to look like you're enjoying the speech. An audience that's having a good time is far easier to persuade than one that's uncomfortable, bored, or antagonistic. Antagonistic means they want to argue against you. So you never want the audience to be antagonistic. You've got to let your audience know that you care about them. One of the best ways to do this is to make eye contact with people throughout your presentation. So like I said earlier, try to look at the smiling people, not the frowning people or scowling. You should pick out a person and look right at him or her for a couple of seconds, and then move on to another person in another part of the room. Be sure to include all areas of the room, but don't get into a fixed pattern where you kind of go right, left, right, left, right, left. You don't want to do that. So such as left front, left back, right front. Keep them guessing as to who will be your next target. This not only makes your eye contact more natural and effective, but because they don't know whom you're going to look at next, it helps you to keep the entire audience's attention. You should never let the house lights be dimmed, so that's lowered, to the point where you can't see. So imagine, can you turn the lights almost off and you can't see and have eye contact with your audience? It's not a good technique. If this means eliminating your visual aids, then eliminate them. So if the light is so low that you can't use your visual aids, then get rid of them. The speech is more important than the visual aids. If you want your audience to pay attention to you, you must pay attention to your audience. Rightfully so. Next, we move on to body language. Body language. When it's your turn to speak, approach or go up to the lectern confidently with your head held high and your shoulders back, not looking down at your shoes and frowning. People say, oh, this person is not confident. When you get to the lectern, stand erect, which means stand straight. Don't slump, which means don't lean over. Don't tense your shoulders like you're going to fight. Don't sway, which means that your body go back and forth. Actually, sway is side to side. Don't rock means back and forth. If you have any of these bad habits, work hard to break them. It's always better to stand than sit, even in small groups and informal surroundings. Standing sends a message of energy, enthusiasm, confidence, and control. Yes, sometimes the sitting people say you look good, tired. Standing, they're like, wow, that guy's got strong legs. If the circumstances warranted, if the circumstances kind of need or accepted, for example, when you're speaking off the cuff, which means kind of like saying what you want to say, not the program part of your speech, with a portable microphone or to a relatively small audience, it's perfectly all right to move around the stage. Many people give a speech and they just stay in one spot. They're saying in this indication that you can walk around. But don't pace around like a caged animal. So like a bored doggy that's in a cage going back and forth, and looks like it wants to bite somebody. Just walk around in a free, relaxed manner. This can be very distracting to an audience because they're going to watch you like a ping pong game, back and forth, and they won't listen to your speech. If you're going to move around, be sure you don't get into a set pattern that the audience will begin monitoring or watching instead of paying attention to what you're saying. Stay at the lectern if you want to play it completely safe. Yeah, just some students are really scared, so they'll just stay there and hold on. And that's okay as long as you have a good delivery of your speech. Okay. Now the next one is a dangerous one because a lot of people don't realize their own gestures, and this can make people laugh at you or really just make people not pay attention to your speech at all. So here we go. Hold on. The problem with gestures is not that people don't know how to effectively use their hands and arms. The problem is that when people get in front of an audience, they tend to do things that prevent from gesturing spontaneously and naturally. That's important. Spontaneously is like instantly and naturally. Perhaps the most egregious thing that speakers do, or like bothering, is rattling coins in a pocket. Usually that's a man. I haven't really seen women do it. But men reach into their pockets, they feel shy, and then they start moving the coins around in their hand, and you can hear the noise, and that's a distraction. That gesture, it's not good. Do this, and in no time, the audience will be thinking, That's a dime or two, perhaps a nickel, a couple of quarters. See, so they're not paying attention to your words. They're trying to think what you have in your pocket change-wise. Instead of paying attention to what you're saying, see? If you have this habit, be sure your pockets are empty when addressing a group. That's a great technique if this is one of your natural habits. Make sure you do not have any coins in your pocket when you go up there, because then you can move your fingers around and there's no coins, so no noise. In extreme cases, if you still can't keep your hands out of your pockets, with or without coins, you may have to sew them up when making a talk. That's funny. That's severe. You'll have somebody sew up your pockets because you still can't help but put your hands in your pockets. That's up to you. Maybe if you're giving speech for a company and they're going to pay you a lot of money for a successful speech, then sewing up your pockets might not be a bad idea. On the bottom, another gesture destroying move is locking your hands behind your back. Still, another is to grip the lectern as if you or it are in danger of flying away. Another way to say that is some people just hold on really tight and you see their hands like they start getting the white knuckles and it looks like they're holding on during an earthquake. Right? You don't want to do that. It really shows nervousness and tension. Some speakers tap the lectern or their notes with a pen or finger. So, you know, the old, hear that? Don't do that, either with your pen or your finger. These idiosyncrasies, which means these small things that people do, annoy or upset an audience at the best of times and will drive them to distraction if the microphone is particularly sensitive. Like you're next to it and you breathe into it and they can hear it like when. Got to be careful and observe your body while you're giving a speech. If you do these things, stop. Here's the best way to break these habits. Okay? When you're starting to speak, or if you catch yourself falling into a bad habit during your presentation, rest your fingertips lightly on the lectern and then forget about them. I don't have fingers. Just ignore them. Your normal habits then will take over and your gestures will become more natural, spontaneous, and completely appropriate. If you just forget about what your hands and arms are doing, they'll do just fine by themselves. Nearly everyone gestures naturally while conversing or talking at a party with friends, and it need be no different in front of a group. Just let your arms and hands do what comes naturally. Okay. Interaction with the audience. Audience participation is always effective. So if there's an appropriate, non-disruptive, or non-bothering way to engage them, talk to them, don't hesitate to do so. You can have audience participation with large groups simply by asking rhetorical questions or by asking for a show of hands. Everybody raise their hand who's eaten a Krispy Kreme donut, right? And this will get you connected to the audience. Anything that gets an audience thinking along with you is beneficial in building a rapport or a connection with them. Rhetorical questions are designed to get the audience thinking about the issue while you go on to develop the answer during your presentation. An example of a rhetorical question is, what if we all stopped paying our income tax? Right? Then everybody, at least American people, will listen to you. Everybody hates paying income tax. So they might think you're trying to give them a way out of it, but unfortunately, There's not really a way out of it. To prove my point, if you remember an actor that was popular, maybe 15 years ago, a black actor named Wesley Snipes, he was given really bad tax information from some tax woman who was giving information to movie stars. It said, really, if you look at the original writing in the tax law, you don't have to give taxes to the government. It's only because you want to. So don't pay taxes. And I don't know what he was making, $4 or $5 million a movie. So that's a lot of tax. Let's say if he made $20 million in a year on 3-4 movies, maybe he owed $5 million in tax. So he didn't pay. He got arrested by the IRS and went to jail for a certain amount of time. So, like I said, this will make people listen. If you want the audience to respond to a question by a show of hands, tell them that you expect them to do so. Say something like, I'm wondering how many of you feel that you have enough insurance. If you do, please raise your hand. Again, you're trying to get people to think along the same topic. And of course, always take the time to look around and get a feel for their response. But never make fools of an audience. Never make fun of them, because they will turn against you and become antagonistic and want to argue with you. I once saw a speaker think he was getting effective audience participation by asking everyone to turn around and shake hands with the person behind them. Of course, this is impossible because everyone is then turned around. All he succeeded in doing was insult the audience. You don't want to do that. You always have to respect your audience. If you don't, they'll sense it or feel it, and nothing you say or do after that will please them or make them happy. A delicate type of audience interaction arises or comes forth when someone begins to heckle you. Heckle you, again, this happens to gag people or stand-up comics. They make fun of you. You're not funny. You're stupid. Go home. My grandmother's more funny than you. So sometimes in a speech, someone will heckle you. It's very, very rare. Like I said, it's more common for stand-up comedians. It's very difficult to generalize about heckling situations, but you will rarely come out ahead by getting into a mudslinging match, which means mudslinging is, throwing mud. So what they're trying to say is that you don't want to start insulting the heckler. The person who heckles you is a heckler. So you don't want to do that. It just sounds bad. They say something bad about you, and you say something bad about them. The rest of the audience will usually start out on your side at the beginning. But if you argue with the heckler, say for a while, your support will soon start to splinter or divide. Some people will just take sides. Be firm and courteous, which is friendly, respectful, but keep control of the situation. Being diplomatic. Remember, diplomats don't choose sides. Which country do you like, Mexico or Korea? Both are good. See, doesn't choose a side. So being diplomatic will count more than being quick or clever and saying an insult back. So maintain your composure. Composure is your ability to stand strong and confident and not quickly get angry and say or do foolish things. As the adage advises, which means the old sayings, you should always engage brain, which means start thinking before starting tongue, which means start talking, because that's easy to say things that we regret later. A good technique is to suggest to the heckler that you'll be happy to discuss matters one-on-one after your presentation, you and the heckler. Then after you say that, just ignore him. Get on with the presentation. If this doesn't work, you may have to resort to asking whoever is in charge of the event to have the person cautioned or in extreme case removed. So when they do that, you say, can you go talk to that person, let them know that I'm listening to them, but I have to continue with my speech. So, maybe we can speak later. Or if the person is just so nasty and so rude and starts with bad words, you can tell them, can you please remove this person? It's completely out of control. It's ruining the speech and the audience's enjoyment this evening. So at the bottom, after an interruption, such as a heckler, you have to regain your audience's attention because they will be looking at this person as they're escorted out or watching them as they're being made fun of by the security without creating a feeling of hostility, which means anger, or confrontation, arguing. Don't refer to the incident other than to apologize for the disturbance, right? The heckler. Then briefly summarize where you were in your talk and get on with your presentation. Get on with it, and it's not important to you. And then this will make it easier to not be important to the audience. Resist letting your mind wander back to whatever happened. Concentrate instead on delivering your message and finishing your talk in a positive vein. If you finish it, then it will be negative, even though it's not your fault. If someone in the audience corrects a mistake you've made, admit them you were wrong. You're right there. I think I got that fact wrong. Thank you for helping me. So you thank them and then move on. Don't spend a lot of time on it. Never get caught being purposely evasive. Evasive means, like if you're trying to catch a cat, it's almost impossible for you to catch them unless they're stuck in a room, the way they move. So maybe you're not answering a question for them, so you're just avoiding it. And that's being evasive. When someone agrees with the point you've made, just say thank you. Don't talk more. You might sound egotistical. And let it go at that, always. Otherwise, you may seem like members of some mutual admiration society, or the questioner may look like a plant. In other words, your credibility suffers. Okay, so this word plant, we're not talking about a plant from the garden. And this does happen sometimes, especially if you're going to go give a speech with a tough crowd. They will put someone from your own company in there that will laugh or agree with your points to try to influence the audience. And that's called a plant. So this person's not a plant, but they like you and they like your points and they keep on agreeing. Just tell them thank you and continue. Don't stand there, thank you, my friend. And what really do you like? And I'm glad that it's, no. Just go on. Okay, next part, enthusiasm. That means when you're all excited and want to do something. And emotion. You don't want to come off as a robot-like figure to the audience. Remember that it's perfectly fine to let your emotions shine through. Just don't be out of control. Good speakers bring personality, excitement, and passion to what they're saying. Audiences are interested in you as a person. So don't be afraid to show them your heart as well as your face. So here they're not saying to start crying and fall down on the floor and ask for mommy. They're just saying show them some emotion. Don't be a robot, and show them positive emotion. People want to see that. Continuing, emotion is a two-sided communication coin. Positive, genuine emotions are constructive, persuasive forces. So again, this positivity can persuade them to agree with you. But negative or insincere, which means you don't mean it, emotions create barriers. Use your emotions to your advantage. Being cold, aloof, which means you don't want to talk or look at people, or ill-tempered, right, moody, will never make you well-liked. If you behave like you don't believe in your message, again, credibility, no one else will believe in it either. On the other hand, being enthusiastic and upbeat, it's another way to say positive, will win people over. On the bottom, audiences appreciate and respect speakers who clearly believe in what they are saying. The audience may disagree with you, but they are less likely to become hostile or angry if they believe in your sincerity. So, as an American person, if you get up there and you don't like salsa, when you say, yeah, I really love salsa, they won't believe you. So you have to sound like you really do. Man, salsa's the best thing in the world. Throw away ketchup, that's garbage. Salsa is the king. And people will believe in your message. If you consistently demonstrate to the audience that you feel strongly about what you're saying, you can pretty well stop worrying about any other speaking technique. Communicate your convictions or the things you believe in by saying what you know and showing how you feel. Those are important. You really stand behind your company's product, for an example. Inexperienced speakers tend to be inhibited. So inhibited means very, very shy. Or too over the top, which means too domineering, too exciting. The kind of guy that, let's say there's 3 of you on the team and it's your turn to speak and you have the microphone and you just say a few words and the over the top person steals the mic out of your hand because they can't control themselves. They don't want to wait till you're done. They want to go first. Just be yourself. You don't have to dramatically change your personality or become a phony. A phony is a person that is not being honest. Nobody can be you as well as you can. Don't forget that. That goes along with what I said earlier about when you pick a speech, pick it about something you know, usually yourself. Nobody is more of an expert about yourself than you are. Your audience needs to know that you care. If you don't care enough about your subject, change the topic or cancel the speech. The audience can see it and feel it. Next is pace, and that's the speed. Everybody has a different pace. Use appropriate pacing, pauses, that's when you wait, and timing to make the best impact. Don't speak too fast, right? Use appropriate pacing, pauses, timing it. Don't do that. Though you do need to pick up your pace for teenagers and children who have shorter attention spans. So you can't speak as slowly and deliberately for them. It's just the way it is. Pauses are essential. That's when you stop, small 1 second pause, 2 second pause, and effective parts of any speech. In addition to providing emphasis, pauses allow an audience to catch up with you while you catch your breath. Wonderful places for pauses are right after a rhetorical question or when you've lost your place. Remember though, there's a difference between a pause and a silence. Pause is very, very short. Silence is longer, and that usually shows that you don't know what to say next or you're confused. Pauses should never be more than a few seconds, like I said. 1, 2, maybe a 3-second pause at the most. Never talk over applause or laughter. Always wait them out. So if people are clapping, yay, don't try to talk over it. Accept it, wait till they're done. Same thing with laughing. They're laughing at one of your jokes. Ha, 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 ha. Don't say, okay, I got to keep on talking. No, let them laugh until they stop. So always wait them out. When time is short, don't talk faster, talk less. Edit as you go along. End with conviction. Conviction is that strong feeling. I really believe this. That's with conviction. Never introduce new material near the end of your talk. It's too late at that point. You have to do that in the beginning to make sure your audience understands it and can enjoy it. Okay, visual aids. Some people use them, some people don't. I'm just letting you know. The range or the variety of available visual aids stretches all the way from a flip chart costing a few dollars to professional audiovisual productions costing tens of thousands of dollars. If you're doing a company and you have to spend that much, maybe the company will spend on it for you, not you. Many books have been written and many courses designed dealing with the production and presentation of audiovisual shows. This book is about gaining poise, and poise is when you have the ability to be strong when people are interrupting you or there's background noise and continue with a good speech. And confidence as a speaker. It is designed to help you develop into a dynamic presenter rather than a graphic arts designer or a computer technician. Therefore, this chapter will simply deal with some principles to keep in mind when deciding whether to use visual aids, how many to use, and how to use them effectively. Unless you're in a teaching situation or introducing a new and complex concept, you should use as few visual aids as possible. That might be a question, folks. Select only those aids that clearly enhance or make better the presentation without distracting the audience from paying attention to what you are saying. Backdrop visual aids, such as company logo or some other image relevant to the occasion, are always appropriate, and you should never hesitate to use them. Visual aids designed to make the speech more entertaining, such as the occasional cartoon or effective picture, are perfectly fine to use. Remember, though, that if you're using someone else's material, such as a comic strip panel or picture, permission must be obtained from the copyright holder and credit given. Otherwise, you will be sued. You shouldn't be too thrilled if there was a competing event going on while you're speaking. Yet overly produced visual aids, and especially sound and light shows, constitute competing events right there on stage with you. You wouldn't want another speaker on the podium talking at the same time as you, would you? Well, sophisticated audiovisuals can be just about the same thing or maybe worse. So what they're saying here is people will get into the visual effects and not remember the words in your speech. You're competing against your own too expensive visual aids. Concentrate on the speech's meaning instead. Too much light, sound, and imagery will reduce you to a faceless and forgettable technician. See? You want the audience to go away talking about you and what you had to say. You don't want them to remember only the great sound and light show. The reason you're there in person, rather than having just sent a letter, memo, voicemail, or email to the attendees, is the inherent value of having the author of a message physically in front of the intended audience. It is your chance to show how well you know your subject. It is your chance to interact with the audience. Your being there gives the audience the opportunity to get a feel for you as a person. They get to see the expression on your face, observe your body language, and listen to the tone of your voice as your message is being delivered. The overuse of visual aids interferes with all of that. Yes, it does. If the audience wanted to watch a video, they probably would have done so at home or at the office. They came to see and hear you. If you rely too much on visual aids, the audience will think that you don't have the confidence, ability, or conviction, which means will, to deliver a powerful speech. The more visual aids you use, the less you come across as a leader. So the more senior and respected you are, the fewer visual aids you should use. The key is the fewer. The CEO should never use visual aids except as a backdrop, such as the company name and logo, or some other image relevant to the occasion. If there is content in the CEO's speech that requires visual aids or clarification, someone else should give that part of the presentation. For example, someone else should give, should give that part of the presentation. For example, budget details should be presented by the chief financial officer, right? Finance, not the chief executive officer. Another reason to shy away from overly sophisticated audiovisuals is that additional complexity increases the odds of something going wrong. So the more facets that you use, there's more of a chance you have a technical problem. You've probably sat uncomfortably in the audience while the speaker fumbled with the next and back buttons on the machine, or continually interrupted the presentation to instruct another person, or continually interrupted the presentation to instruct another person who was operating the equipment to go to the next image, return to the last one, or skip a couple. It's disconcerting or annoying to the audience, destroys the flow of the presentation, and diminishes or lowers the reputation of the speaker. Sophisticated computer-driven technology is extremely useful during preparation. But always confirm to yourself that it will enhance your presentation rather than distract from it. Make sure that you clearly know how to operate the equipment or have a competent person assisting you. And always include the assistant and the technology in your rehearsals. Rehearse with them. You'll work out the bugs, as they say. Visual aids must not be your message. They should just support your message. Before using a visual aid, make sure that it is 1, relevant, 2, informative, 3, necessary, because if it's not, don't use it, 4, foolproof, which means you can't make a mistake with it, and 5, worth the trouble and expense, which your company will pay. Content. Visual aids containing only words are usually redundant, which means they overly repeat, and rarely add anything to a speech. Sometimes slides containing point summaries of what you're saying can be helpful, however. People can read a lot faster than you can talk if you post things up audio-visually. If the visual aid just repeats what you're saying, the audience will read what's on the screen rather than listen to and look at you. They will miss your tone of voice, inflection, and body language, all of which may be extremely important to your credibility and the persuasiveness of your message. Worse still, they will finish the thought before you do. Then their minds will wander and you'll completely lose their attention. You don't want that as a speech giver. Whenever possible, it's better to use pictures and graphs rather than words and numbers. Why? Okay, it'll explain here. Graphs are much more understandable than tables or rows and columns of numbers. Again, the mathematic precepts. A table with complex data, it's a mathematical table, confuses, but a simple graph clarifies. Eliminate all clutter, so that means everything that's thrown together, it's very messy looking. That is called clutter. An audience will grasp or understand and remember a clear graphic presentation, but will usually ignore and always quickly forget a complex table or many numbers. Unless it's a summary of points that you've covered already, Deal with just one main point per visual aid. Be sure that the contents of the visual aid can be clearly seen by the entire audience, not just the front rows. If you have to read to the audience what's on the visual aid, then the visual aid is worse than useless. They should be able to read it themselves. Keep the attention on you. Using visual aids. When using visual aid, explain in advance the point that's going to be illustrated on. Just don't put the picture up there. Then show the visual aid as evidence to back up what you said, not just repeat what you said. Talking and showing a visual aid at the same time, unless it's a summary point or a simple backdrop, can be confusing and redundant. So watch the same time timing. Talk, then show is the way to go, and that all rhymes. If the visual aid is not a summary or backdrop, don't let the audience see it until you've introduced what's going to be on it. And then get out of the way as soon as you've dealt with it, right? Never use a visual aid solely or only for dramatic effect. It must also support or enhance your message. That might be a question too. If you're good and if you've prepared properly, you don't need gimmicks. Gimmicks are like tricks. People remember two types of speakers: the best they've heard and the worst they've heard. So usually not in between. You'll never make it into the first category if you overuse visual aids. That's what they will remember you for. Don't hand out copies of your visual aids beforehand unless you want them used as a workbook or when introducing a new and complex subject. If the audience has these copies, they will examine them rather than listening to you and watching you. They might even make notes on them and completely ignore you. You don't want that. They'll no longer be paying attention to the pace, tone, and continuity of your presentation. You'll have lost their attention, and a lot of the effectiveness of your talk will have evaporated or disappeared. Finally, never speak to the audience while you're turned to look at the visual aid. If you have to look at the visual aid for some reason, stop talking. Always talk to the audience, never to the visual aid. So some of these things might sound small, but if you don't pay attention to these, you will do these bad habits. So trying to get you to avoid these. All right, our famous in a nutshell. 1, unless in a teaching situation or when introducing a new and complex subject, use as few visual aids as possible. 2, visual aids that make a speech more entertaining, such as a cartoon, and backdrop visuals, such as company logo, shouldn't be a problem. 3, if you're using copyrighted material, such as a comic strip panel, permission must be obtained and given credit. You can't say, I invented the Peanuts comic strip. You're going to get in trouble. 4, visual aids should never dominate a presentation, meaning they should not be the 85% of your presentation. You want the audience to remember you and your message, not just the sound and light show. So maybe 90% of you, 10% visual image. The more visual aids you use, the less you come across as a leader. That means you're not strong in developing your own speech. You just use visual aids. 6, the only visual aids a CEO should use are backdrops or other images relevant to the occasion, never information visuals. 7, don't get mirrored in technology, which means don't get stuck, just need technology, right? Right? 8, visual aids should just support your message, not be your message. 9, the criteria for visual aids are that they be relevant, informative, necessary, foolproof, and worth the time and expense for your company. 10, pictures are better than words, and graphs are better than numbers. Numbers are about the worst you can do. 11, unless it's a summary, deal with just one main point per visual aid. 12, unless it's a summary or a backdrop, don't let the audience see the visual aid until you've introduced what's going to be on it. 13, when you've finished with the visual aid, get rid of it. 14, never use a visual aid solely, which means only, for dramatic effect. It must also support your message. 15, don't hand out copies of your visual aids beforehand unless you want them used as a workbook. And the last one, 16, of our nutshell, never talk with your back or side turned to the audience while looking at the visual aid. So you see, I plan to also use rehearse because I thought would be really low, but I've actually finished with our allotted time for the lesson. So I'll move this to next week's lesson. So don't worry about this. I'm going to cut it off. I know you're watching it right now, but I'm going to cut it off. And the questions that go with it, I'm going to throw that onto the following week's lesson. Okay. So thank you for going on this ride today and this lecture with me. I hope you enjoyed it. And I shall see you soon. I don't want a new share. I want to stop. There we go. All right. So I will talk to you in a week. Okay. Bye-bye.